Thank you. Thank you. All right. Today, I'd like to talk to you about invasive species. And what are invasive species? Well, invasive is defined as tending to spread prolifically and harmfully or undesirably. Now, that's a textbook definition, so it doesn't really tell us what an invasive organism is. So I have to define a few parameters to classify these organisms by. First of all, an invasive organism must be non-indigenous to the area within which it is invasive. All right, so that means it can't be native to the environment it's invading. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, if a critter had a predator in its native environment, it wouldn't be invasive. Anyways, next characteristic is the ability to reproduce effectively and rapidly. This is crucial to an invasive species because if they weren't massively overpopulated in the area that they're invading, they would go unnoticed and wouldn't be really a problem. The next is an invasive species must be able to disperse itself very rapidly and effectively. Dispersal can occur in two ways. One way is it can be through human interaction, where like it catches a ride on a cargo ship, or it can be through self-introduction, in which like a seed would hitch a ride on a gust of wind to an island and take over that island. And so that's dispersal. Oh, God. This is like my fear. All right, so then an invasive species must also be a generalist. Now, a generalist is something that can handle a broad set of challenges that it may face in the environment. So it has to be able to face cold weather, certain seasons. It has to be able to face really hot weather, rainy weather, all sorts of things. And that's a very important characteristic of an invasive species. Many invasive species can go anywhere on the planet. They just have multiple ecosystems that they can survive in. So now I have a few examples of these invasive species that a lot of you probably have heard of. You might be quite familiar with them, and they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. The first one is kudzu. Kudzu is a vine that has taken over the southeast, the United States southeast. All right. It was first introduced in 1876 when the government was sponsoring it as an erosion control measure and ornamental plant. They paid farmers to distribute it, to plant it, and a lot of farmers thought that since their animals like to eat it, they would be able to harvest it, use it as like a secondary hay crop for part of the year. And turns out it's kind of hard to harvest because, like, you know, it grows up like that onto things, and so it wasn't really good for that. And then later they found out that kudzu, the conditions in the southeast United States are practically perfect for kudzu growth. I mean, there's tons of rain, it's warm, it never freezes, which would kill the kudzu roots. And so, I mean, it just took over. It's completely overpowering a lot of the places there. And when it grows over these trees, it kills them a lot of time. And I mean, you can see from the picture, pretty heavy stuff, you know? All right, the next one, which was the opening slide of my presentation, is the cane toad. Now, the cane toad was first introduced in the 1930s, not here in Australia. And they introduced it because it's been introduced in other locations before as a pest control measure. It eats a lot of stuff. It'll eat anything it can, pretty much, kind of like the house cat. I mean, and what it does is they release it in the fields, and it's supposed to eat the pests that are devouring the crops. And in Australia, it was sugarcane that they were worried about, and so they introduced it for that. But the sugarcane fields didn't really supply a lot of cover for the toad, so it didn't stay in the fields, and it really started multiplying quite rapidly because none of the predators in Australia can handle the cane toad That's because it's got a toxin, and when you eat it, you die. Like, they find dead snakes all the time, and yeah, stuff like that. So today, the population in Australia is estimated about 200 million cane toads, and it's a huge thing. It's referenced a lot in popular culture. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Simpsons episode, but it's in that. And this one, once again a little closer to home, is the red fire ant. Now this guy, he's a bastard. He was introduced in the 1930s, and once again, I guess the 1930s was like a big year for introducing invasive species. I mean, they weren't very careful about trade or something, but anyways, it was introduced in the southeast of the United States once again, and they didn't really. It's not really a big deal. It's kind of aggressive, but it has been spreading. I mean, it's pushing more north every year, and a lot of people attribute that to global warming because it makes it easier to live in more northern climates. But yeah, it's really aggressive. It stings. It causes like 80 deaths a year, which isn't that big a deal, but I mean, 80 deaths. Who would want to be killed by a bunch of fire ants? So mounds have been known to pop up in yards practically overnight, and like it's been known to climb up trees and kill birds and stuff. And this one, which I have actually brought in today, and pass this around. If you don't like bugs, you don't have to touch it. It's in a plastic bag though, so it's perfectly sanitary. It's peanut butter in there. I thought they ate peanut butter, but they don't. This is the brown marmorated stink bug. It's native to Asia, and it was first discovered in Pennsylvania, first documented in Pennsylvania in 2001. It's native to Asia. It was thought to hitch a ride over here on some shipping freight or something like that. And I really hate these things because they are all over my house. They are everywhere. Okay, they're like I mean, I went home this weekend and like I put on an apron. We have this rack of aprons in our house, and the aprons are like warm. And these bugs, they go into the house in the wintertime. They can survive throughout the winter. They hibernate, and so they go into people's houses in the wintertime, and they just find warm spots. And I put on this apron, and I was just like, okay, time to do the dishes. And I look down. I'm just covered in these freaking stink bugs, and you can't touch them because what happens when you touch them is they release it's actually a slight toxin. It's a scent. And when you touch them, it's a weird scent. It's not pleasing, to say the least. And these guys, they're rapidly spreading. I mean, they're everywhere. Last year you saw them here and there, but this year they're just all over the place. All right, and they eat vegetation. They've been known to cause damage to fruit trees, and that's particularly important in Northern Virginia where they grow apples because they really like the apples. Put a piece of lettuce in there for them. It's Bill and Martha, by the way. So yeah. These guys are buggers. I hate them. So what can we do about these invasive species? Well, first of all, can I have that bag back? Is everyone taking a look? Pass it around. Come on, let's go. And what can we do? Well, invasive species, there's a number of preventative measures that you can take to control the spread of these invasive species. And the preventive measures include, like controlling trade, making sure that these, because a lot of them are introduced through shipping freight, and it's really hard to control like bugs getting onto a box that's like bigger than this room. But I mean, it must be done because these things really stink, And so yeah, and then there's another thing we can do about these invasive species, and I've been keeping these guys around for a week, and so yeah. The other thing we can do is extermination. Thank God. And don't smell this bag because it's going to be terrible. Yeah, extermination. So we can take preventative measures and we can exterminate. And so that's what I'm preaching you today. Be like Mr. Dale Gribble from King of the Hill. He's an exterminator on the show. Any of you aren't familiar with that. And eliminate these nuisances. Just if you see one in your house, don't brush it up and put it outside. Kill it. Kill it for me. Kill it for yourselves. All right? And thanks for your time today.